for your troubles. You've more than earned it.
Oh, no, that's not necessary. Didn't you mean to say it's not enough? Goes without saying. These mortals, they die so easily.
It was, we had lured a young gentleman, you know, who happened to have some money in his pocket out into the country, where we proceeded to murder him. And McLeod's friend happened to stumble by because we'd set the body on fire. We really weren't nice, but, and we chose that as a propitious opportunity to put some papers that would be incriminating on his body, so he would be accused of our crime and we could get away scot-free. And then, of course, you know, Duncan, to save his friends, he confesses to the crime that he didn't do either. And, you know, I get to be there to witness the hanging. Until he accosts us later in the forest near the maze where we fight for the first time.
We tried to avoid, although it proved to be impossible, having sort of the immortal of the week.
We were going for the strangers on a train effect, where this guy gets McLeod into a position where he's done him a favor against McLeod's will, and now he's trying to get McLeod to do him a favor. And I think the episode lost focus because we did need to have an evil immortal.
The strangers on a train, if you will, concept that, okay, you know, you kill this person and I'll kill that person and nobody will ever know because nobody knows that we have a connection to these people, is a fascinating idea that has, you know, run its course in films and television and novels for quite a long time.
You want the tape? It's yours. All you have to do is perform a certain service for me, which shouldn't be too difficult for a man of your obvious talents.
What would that be?
I want you to kill my wife.
And to me, that was the most interesting part, was that McLeod got forced into a situation, at least initially, that, you know, over which he had very little, if no, control.
Perfect. It's a win-win situation. I get what I want, and you get what you want.
Actually, I enjoy this episode a lot. It's not one of our outstanding, memorable episodes that everybody puts on their best of list, but I think that it has a charm of being one of Highlander's straightforward episodes in which McLeod gets trapped into a situation that I like it when he's in a somewhat humorous situation, and so he's reacting with exasperation. I think that's a thing he does charmingly. But then in the end, there's real evil to fight, and he puts it down.
One of the more interesting things for me was always when immortals were forced to interact with mortals, and they did not choose to do so.
Well, let's say I go to my friend the DA, and he starts digging around. Now, what do you think is going to happen?
The story with the lawyer was meant to be a new approach, and it's really the story with Curlo, which winds up sort of taking over because it occupies the flashback, is the more boring of the two stories, and yet somehow becomes the center of the episode.
It was a lot of fun. It was kind of interesting. This is one of the few times in my career where I haven't had to read for a role. I was cast out of Toronto. I was up in Toronto at the time. And my abilities and my experience and resume got me the role, so I flew just almost directly from Toronto to Vancouver. I think I read the script on the plane, and we went straight to wardrobe.
Don't you think you better get out of town before someone sees you're alive?
As soon as I have your head.
We'd gone through a period where the bad guys were not immortals and there was no sword fight and no quickening, and that didn't work for the show. So we had to serve two masters. Our main antagonist of the week was meant to be Robert Waverly, but we needed to have Curlo in the story so that we could end with a sword fight, and this one's a great one.
one of the things that when I'm choreographing a fight I'm very aware of is that I'm making choices about the character, because the moves and what a character does do and what he doesn't do, which is sometimes more important, have to be reflective of not only the scene, but what the character is doing in his own mind in the fight and whatnot. So I'm basically providing the subtext in the moves of the choreography that the actor would normally do himself for his lines. So every time I choreograph a fight for another actor, especially if I'm not able to work with that other actor prior to rehearsing, or if I don't know the other actor at all, which in the case of Highlander was 90% of the time, I'm very aware that I am making artistic decisions for that actor that would not necessarily be his or hers.
I'm here now.
We showed up on the set, and as always, there wasn't really enough time to do what we'd hoped to be able to do. Braun had sketched out, he had some stuff down on paper, but by that point, we had gotten to know each other. He was welcoming my input, both because of my experience and ability, and because I was playing the characters.
One of the aspects of that fight was because I was working for the first time with Tony DeLongis, I was now working with a guest star who had a tremendous amount of sword experience himself. As a matter of fact, Tony is, of course, a fight choreographer in his own right, and a very good one, too.
When we were filming Blackmail, we got the call from Vancouver in the writer's office saying, this guy's a great sword fighter. Can we change the ending of the episode so that he doesn't die, so the character can come back, be something of a recurring villain, we can have some more great sword fights?
With Tony, I had this wonderful experience of being able to work directly with him to evolve the sword fights, because I could trust him and he could trust me. So I would put the sword up and say, how would you respond to this? He would respond, and then say, well, what's open on me? How would you respond to that? And he would respond, and we would basically just play with each other and evolved the fight between the two of us, just like we did in Duende. So that is a rare privilege to be able to do that.
As Braun likes to put it, he hates when he has to play both parts all the time this way. We used his sort of scenario or his template, and then we evolved things that I could bring my knowledge to it, and Adrian would have his input as well.
Tony will bring moves to a fight scene that I might not have considered, or that in the odd case I don't even know myself. Because as a fight choreographer, I am very aware of how much I don't know still. It also ensured that the fight was more character-based. And of course, Adrian will change the occasional move himself, not just because I move differently than him, but because who knows the character of MacLeod better. In Blackmail, it was the first time I was able to work with an actor who was so expert with the sword that we were able to collaborate with the choreography rather than just my doing the fight and saying, here are the moves, can you do them? And how much do we have to tweak them so that you can?
In this particular instance, we decided the fight would start in the living room and then move through the glass house and then kind of climax out at the pool. What he did inform me of, though, when we were first starting was the special effects guys have already rigged this television and this bookcase, so this furniture must die. And so part of our choreography, not only, you're always trying to reveal character and drive the story forward, otherwise it's just kind of a lot of gymnastics and fancy moves. We also had to kill this furniture because it had been paid for and rigged.
This was a fight that took 2 days to film because of its length and complexity. But I think artistically, it was a much more satisfying experience, both for myself as a choreographer and I think for the overall visual of the fight, because so many other elements were brought to it that would not, under normal circumstances, have been available to us.
The truth was the character of Kurla was not interesting enough to us to leave him alive and bring him back. He was a pretty stock evil immortal. So David Abramowitz answered Adrian Paul. He said, let's bring him back with a different mustache, a different look, a different accent, and have the same actor play a different character. And we put his name on a list that we had in the kitchen of actors that we were planning to have on the show. It had Michael Praed on it. It had David Gegenhuber from Earth 2. It had Adam Ant on it, who we actually tried to get on the show more than once. We also had a list in the kitchen that we called the Hot List, which was a list of lines that we never wanted to hear on the show again. We never wanted to put them in a script again. We had I Don't Think So. We had It's What We Do. We had It's Who We Are. And we tried to avoid letting Duncan say those things because they had become the cliches of the show.
If anybody asks you about that videotape.
What tape?
Well, the one with...
I don't know anything else about a tape.
If you want to hang on for a minute, I'll give you a ride wherever you want to go.
Okay.
I'll be right with you.
What happens if they're almost discovered? We have sort of as a standard response, most mortals who discover immortality, a Watcher comes along and recruits them to the Watcher cause, which I sort of suspect is what happened with Waverly's wife when the episode was over, was that Joe came along and said, I got a job for you now that you know the truth.